Hey everyone! Great to have you back for another video. In spring 2025, I traveled to Jordan with my partner and two of her kids. We visited her family and friends, but also spent some time exploring on our own. I wanted to keep things simple and bring just one lens. For a long time, I couldn't decide between my beloved EF 2.8 24-70mm L version 2 and Canon's 28-300mm superzoom. Well, you already know which one I picked. In this video, I'll walk you through the specs of that lens, take a closer look at its build and optical quality, and of course show you lots of photos I shot with it on this trip. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button and maybe subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks so much! This lens is a real bicep workout. It was introduced back in 2004 as the successor to the EF 3.5 to 5.6 35 to 350mm. While the aperture range stayed the same, Canon gave it a wider 28mm starting point, though you do lose a bit on the tele end compared to its predecessor. It has a slightly longer minimum focus distance of 0.7 meters compared to the 0.6 meters on the older model. But the cool thing is, you can use that 0.7 meters across the entire zoom range. On the older 35 to 350mm, that close focus distance of 0.6 meters was only available between 35 and 135mm. Canon also added an image stabilizer IS, which, according to Canon, lets you shoot handheld at shutter speeds up to 3 stops slower than usual, helping reduce blur from camera shake. Other features include a circular aperture for smoother, more pleasing background blur, or that creamy bokeh everyone loves, and a tough, water and dust-resistant build that, according to Canon's website, ensures reliable performance even in the harshest shooting conditions. As for the specs, the weight went up from 1,385 grams on the 35 to 350mm to a solid 1,670 grams on the 28 300mm. The filter thread grew from 72 to 77mm, and the overall size increased too, from 167.4 by 85 to 184 by 92mm. As usual, you can use this lens, like pretty much all EF lenses, on any Canon EOS camera with an EF mount. Doesn't matter if you're shooting with a classic EOS 620 from 1987, an EOS 1N from 1994, or a modern digital EOS body, everything works. All camera and lens functions are fully supported. For my trip to Jordan, I brought along my Canon EOS R5. To use my older EF lenses on the RF mount, I'm using the original Canon EF EOS R adapter, the one that lets you insert drop-in filters. Right now, I've got a clear filter, a polarizer, a variable ND, and a pro mist in my kit. So far, I've been able to use all of my EF lenses without any issues, even the older ones with the original AFD drive from the late 80s. Lenses like the EF 28-70, 35-70, 35-105, and 35-135, all with aperture 3.5 to 4.5, or the EF 5.6 100-300L and the legendary EF 2.8 80-200mm L, they all focus fast, reliably, and accurately on the R5. And of course, all that lens data, focal length, aperture, shutter speed, gets properly recorded in the RAW files. The 28-300 is no exception. All the metadata gets transferred just like with any other EF lens. The lens offers a couple of settings you can adjust using various switches on the barrel. Like many zoom lenses from the same era, this one uses a push-and-pull zoom design to change focal length. One downside of that design: if you're not holding the zoom ring and the lens is angled up or down, the zoom can shift on its own due to gravity. This happens especially when shooting from a tripod, where the focal length can change unintentionally the moment you take your hand off the lens. It's particularly annoying during long exposures or when using the self-timer. Canon addressed this issue, just like they did with the earlier 35 to 350mm, by adding a zoom tension adjustment ring. You can tighten it to prevent zoom creep or loosen it to suit your personal shooting style. Honestly, it's a really great feature. Here's a quick look at all the switches on the lens. We'll check out what each one does in just a sec. The lowest switch on the lens is used to select the IS mode you want to shoot with. Mode 1. compensates for vibrations in all directions, and is primarily effective for still photography. Mode 2. Compensates for vertical camera shake when panning horizontally, and for horizontal shake when panning vertically. The next switch turns image stabilization on or off. When shooting on a tripod, it's a good idea to turn IS off to save battery life. If you're shooting in bulb mode for long exposures, make sure to switch the stabilizer off. Leaving it on in this situation can actually cause image stabilization errors. The next switch lets you toggle between AF, for automatic focusing, and MF if you prefer to focus manually. You can manually adjust focus using the focus ring at any time, no matter which focus mode you're in. In one shot of mode, you can fine-tune focus manually by half-pressing the shutter button and then turning the focus ring. The last switch is a focus limiter. It helps speed up autofocus by restricting the focus range, so if you don't need to focus between 0.7 and 2.5 meters, you can turn that range off. The textured ring is used for manual focusing, or, as mentioned earlier, for making adjustments while in autofocus mode. It responds quickly and precisely, but the focus throw is pretty short, so you'll need a bit of a delicate touch when focusing manually. Canon claims the image stabilizer gives you up to 3 stops of shake reduction, but in my experience, that's a bit optimistic. I'd say 2 stops is more realistic in everyday use. The autofocus, on the other hand, is lightning fast and accurate, just what you'd expect from Canon. Once you pop on the lens hood, the whole thing looks even more like a serious piece of gear, or maybe a small rocket launcher. But hey, with all that glass inside, using a hood is definitely a good idea. Not only does it help cut down on flare, it also gives the front element a bit of extra protection, because let's face it, accidents happen. If you've been following the channel, you might have caught the little incident with my Hasselblad in one of my previous videos. Before I dive into my experience with the optical performance, here's a quick overview of the key specs. The build quality is simply outstanding, exactly what you'd expect from a Canon L-series lens. It's rock solid with tight tolerances, premium materials, and a no-nonsense design that feels made for serious work. One of those lenses that just screams reliability. And yeah, it's kinda hard not to fall in love with it. Let's start by taking a look at the optical performance of the Canon EF 28300L. I'll be showing you unedited RAW files shot at different focal lengths and apertures, just real-world examples. Along the way, I'll share my personal impressions of the image quality, the way I see and feel it. Got a different opinion? I'd love to hear it. Drop it in the comments. As always, no charts, no lab results, just real photos from real situations. Let's kick things off at 28mm. I think that 28mm is definitely a weak spot on this lens. After going through hundreds of photos, not just from Jordan, but from various situations, I'd only recommend using this focal length starting at aperture 7.1 and up. The center performance might be good to very good even at wider apertures, but once you move away from the middle, image quality takes a noticeable hit, especially in terms of contrast and sharpness. And honestly, the corners, at anything wider than aperture 7.1, I'd say they're pretty much unusable. Even stop down to aperture 7.1 and 8 at 28mm, you'll still notice some pretty visible chromatic aberration, especially along high-contrast edges. Okay, to be fair, this is a pretty extreme backlight situation. And for a lens with this many elements, especially one from 2004, that's definitely a tough challenge. Using the lens hood is absolutely essential here, and even then, shading the lens with your hand can make a difference. For really solid sharpness across most of the frame, I stick to f11 or f16. That gives you great overall sharpness and very good contrast, except unfortunately, in the extreme corners. Those just never quite get razor sharp no matter what you do. Sorry about the high ISO. I had just been shooting in a dark stairwell and totally forgot to dial it back down. You know how it goes. 1 minute you're chasing light, the next you're shooting in daylight at ISO 800. Still, I think the lens's sharpness and contrast really shine through, even if my ISO settings didn't. So, what does 35mm bring to the table? In my opinion, sharpness and contrast are a bit better here compared to 28mm. You'll get excellent image quality at f11 and f16, and even f8 delivers very usable results. Okay, the extreme corners still aren't exactly showstoppers, but overall, it's a noticeable step up. That said, chromatic aberrations are still clearly visible at 35mm, especially along high-contrast edges near bright areas. This shot was taken at f7.1, and you can definitely see it. Here's another example, a shot taken at 35mm with an aperture of f5.6. This one snuck in from Budapest. A little bonus shot. At 40mm and f11, the lens delivers really solid performance here. And it gets even better. From around 50 up to about 135mm, this lens really hits its sweet spot in terms of sharpness, resolution, and contrast, already starting at f8. At f11, even the outer corners look really clean. Between 150 and 180mm, the image quality remains very good. The corners are a little softer compared to the mid-range, but still absolutely usable. Now I'll show you a few more sample shots. No commentary this time. Just keep an eye on the focal length and shutter speed used in each image. As you've probably figured out by now, stopping the lens down by 2 to 3 stops at any focal length is a good idea if you want the best possible sharpness from edge to edge. In that sense, the Canon 28-300mm really reflects the typical optical performance of a high-quality super zoom lens. No commentary? Yeah, that lasted about 5 seconds. You can clearly see the drop in image quality here, caused by diffraction starting at f22. So here's my honest recommendation. Avoid f22 and anything smaller, like f27, f32, or even f38. It's just not worth the loss in sharpness. Unless you're going for that vintage soft focus look, then by all means, knock yourself out. Yep, another one from Budapest. We made a short stop there on our journey from Windhagen down to Jordan. Here's a sample shot taken at the classic portrait focal length of 85mm, shot at aperture 5. Let's be real. This isn't exactly a bokeh monster with that creamy, dreamy background blur. If you're planning to shoot more than just the occasional portrait, I'd recommend reaching for a different lens. In this example, I find the bokeh a bit busy, maybe even a little harsh. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. 85mm at f11, can't really complain about that. Except that once again, I'm not showing you a photo from Jordan. But don't worry, more Jordan shots are coming soon. Spot on, Jordan. Check out this shot at 100mm f9. This lens really struggles with backlight, especially in extreme situations like this one. Just a quick reminder, the sweet spot for sharpness, contrast, and resolution is somewhere between 50 and 135, with only slight compromises in the outer corners up to around 180 mil. 28 and 35 mil don't quite reach that same level, but when stopped down to f11 or f16, they're still very usable and perform well. Now let's take a look at the 200 to 300 mil range. This is where things start to fall apart a bit. Even at f8, image quality takes a noticeable hit. But keep in mind, at these telephoto focal lengths, stopping down to f8 only means closing the aperture by one stop, since the wide-open value here is f5.6. So in that context, the performance isn't exactly surprising. At 300 mil wide open at f5.6, I'd honestly call the image quality pretty poor. Definitely not up to standard. What do you think? Do you see it differently? Let me know in the comments. At focal lengths from 200 mil onward, I'd strongly suggest avoiding anything wider than f11. Even the image center lacks sharpness at f8. It's just not up to the level you'd hope for. At focal lengths from 200 mil and up, you'll only get good, and in the center, even very good, image quality at f11 or f16. Nothing else really works. Summary: construction and optical performance. Mechanically, the Canon EF 28-300mm is a beast, classic L-series quality, solid, weather-sealed, and built like a tank. It feels great in the hand, and the push-and-pull zoom is smooth, with adjustable resistance and useful features like a focus limiter that let you fine-tune it to your shooting style. Optically, it's a bit of a mixed bag. The sweet spot is between 50 and 135 mil, where the lens really delivers, especially when stopped down to f8 or f11. At 28 and 35 mil, image quality improves a lot at f11 and f16, particularly in the corners. From 200 mil onward, you'll want to shoot at least at f11, ideally f16, to get decent sharpness even in the center. All in all, it's a super versatile travel lens with some real strengths. but also a few compromises, especially if you're expecting top-tier image quality across the entire zoom range. That said, the focal length range is incredibly flexible, and I was able to shoot my entire Jordan trip without ever changing lenses. That mattered to me because this wasn't a photography trip. And yes, I'd absolutely take this lens again as an all-in-one solution. Of course, with some editing, you can get a lot more out of those RAW files. It definitely helps that there's a dedicated lens profile for this lens in Lightroom. The older 35-350mm, by the way, doesn't have a profile, not even in Canon's own DPP software. And now, I'd like to invite you to check out a few edited shots from my trip. Who knows? Maybe they'll even inspire you to plan your own journey to the amazing kingdom of Jordan. Thanks again for spending your time with me and for your interest in this video. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. It's totally free and really helps support my work for you. Take care, stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next video.